Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. We've had some pretty miserable weather recently, so I thought I'd give you a very basic introduction as to how I edit my Hubble Palette images in PicInsight. Okay, so in this video today I'm going to take you through a very basic Hubble Palette editing process in PicInsight. And I thought I'd put this video together because when I first started out in PicInsight, I found the program really daunting. It's not one of those intuitive programs that you can just jump straight into and start editing your images. It takes you quite a long time to learn. And I found myself watching loads of tutorials on YouTube, and there's some great ones out there. So Chuck's Astro, Dylan O'Donnell, Visible Dark, all of them doing some great tutorials and some really in-depth PicInsight tutorials. But I just thought I'd put an extremely basic video together. And I thought of the idea when I was re-editing some old data. So it's been bad weather recently. I haven't been able to get in the garden and collect some new data. So I went back through some old images and I wasn't really happy with the edits. So I thought I'd re-edit them. And I realized that I have a very set process that I go through to get the image to a certain point. And I can do that quite quickly. I can do that in sort of 10-15 minutes. Once I get to that point, I tend to go into some of the more detailed processes in PicInsight. So I run masks, range selections, sharpening, deconvolution, all of that sort of stuff. But just getting to that point still looks pretty good once you get there. So I thought I'd put this very basic video together of how you can pull together a Hubble Palette image in PicInsight. Okay, so I just wanted to start by saying that this definitely isn't the best or the most effective way to edit your image. It's just a really basic sort of starting point if you're just getting into PicInsight. So I arrange my images in folders with HA, O3 and S2. So I've already gone through and selected or got rid of all of the poor images within that. So any image that has star trailing, any image that clouds came across, etc. And to do that I use the blink function. So load the blink, you go to processes, all processes, and then down to blink. And then you can load all of your images in there by clicking on this folder icon. So it says add image files, you click on that and you can load all of your HA images in, then you can do it with O3 and S2, etc. Now once you have them all loaded into the blink tool, you can then use this button here at the top, which automatically stretches them so they all have the same sort of exposure. So click on that, and again it will take a little while to do that. But now you have all of your images loaded into the blink tool, and you can use this function here, just to click play and it will cycle through all of your images really quickly. What I tend to do is just go through them manually, so just use the arrow keys to go down, remove any that have got star trailing or clouds, satellites, etc. So I tend to do that once, and then I tend to zoom in by using this little circle symbol down the bottom here, and then you can zoom into your images and again go through them again to see that they've all got nice sharp stars. Now once you have found an image you want to remove, all you do is click on this little symbol here. So it says remove or move selected file to a new location. You can click on that and then you can add a new folder, and I usually just call that bad subs. Go create, and then you can just click open, and that will move the bad exposure into this file, and it will move it out of your HAS2 or O3 folders. So that leaves you with all of the good images in those folders there. So I'm going to cancel that because I've already done that process. Okay, so now we've got all of our images sorted into a nice folder. What we want to do now is stack them. So you should probably do this manually, and when you learn a bit more about the program you can do that. But what I always do, and I still do this now, is run the batch pre-processing or the weighted batch pre-processing, and that seems to work really well for me. So you load that up, you go to scripts, you go to batch pre-processing, and then weighted batch pre-processing. Now what you can do up the top here, you can add your light frames, your flats, your darks and your biases. So we're going to load our lights first, so go down to the bottom and click add lights. Then you can select all of your HA, and you'll see that PicInsight automatically picks up that it's a HA, they're 5-minute exposures, and it organizes them into a folder there. You can then add in your O3, and again PicInsight should put this into a nice neat folder below. Yep, so there are all of our oxygen files, and then you can add in the S2, and again they should put them into a folder, so it seems like I've got less S2 than the rest. Now here you can add your flats and your bias frames. Now I don't actually have these for this image, so I wasn't taking flats and bias at the time, which I should have been, but I wasn't. And now you can add your darks. Now I don't keep all of my dark frames because when you stack them you get a master dark, so I just tend to keep the masters. So I'm just going to load in a master dark frame here, which will work as the same thing. Then all you need to do really is go to use the master dark function, select your output directory, so where you want all of your images to be saved, and then you can run the diagnostic tool if you want, and here it will tell me there's no dark frames and there's no flat frames, but that's fine, we know that anyway. And then I tend to just leave all of the defaults as they are in PicInsight. It tends to do a really good job for me. I've not had too many issues for that. So then all you need to do is click the run button, and this will take a while. This will take about 20 minutes to go through. It does on my laptop anyway, so I won't sit here for 20 minutes. I'll see you when I'm back. As you can see, it started doing that now. It's calibrating all the images. It will then stack them, and it will then produce a HA, S2 and O3 stack. Okay, so once you have once that's finished, you'll see a few new folders wherever you've saved that to. So I always tend to save it to the same folder. You'll see registered, calibrated, logs, but we're after master. So if you click into master, this will be a stack of all of your HA, all of your O3 and all of your S2 images. So all you need to do is highlight those and open them up. So load them into PicInsight and they should open up. Okay, so here you'll see a number of different files open. Some of them will say rejection on. We're not after that. That's just where you didn't line up your scope correctly or it wasn't perfectly centered. So delete all of the ones that say rejection. We don't need those. Just hit the X button. And then you're left with 3 files. They'll say integration on. So we have the HA stack. And what you can do is just click on the auto stretch function here, which is if you click on this enable/disable screen transfer, then if you click on the arrows, click on the auto stretch function, this will show you what your HA data looks like. So that's your HA. If you click on the same thing with the S2, and then if you click on the same thing with the O3. So you can see I didn't perfectly align the scope. I collected the HA data first and then I went back the few other nights to collect the O3 and the S2. But anyway, this is what our data looks like. Now obviously what we need to do first is crop off some of these, well, this black area of these 2 images here. So to do that we're going to go to processes, we're going to go to geometry, and we're going to go to dynamic crop. Now I'm going to start by cropping the O3 image, so I'm going to give it quite a generous crop. We can always crop down again later after we finish, but I'm going to try and get as much of the frame in as possible before we start actually getting to the black areas. Now what you want to do, instead of just clicking the tick which would actually crop that image, we want to drag this little triangle onto the other 2 images so they have the same crop first. So we're going to drag the triangle onto the HA and that will give the same crop here. I'm going to drag, so just click onto this little triangle, it'll say new instance, and then do it onto the S2 image as well, and then go back to the O3 and just click the tick. So this means that they all have exactly the same crop. So when we assign them to the different color channels, we can then know that they would all match up and all the stars would align. So we have our 3 images here. Now these aren't actually stretched. Okay, so These haven't been stretched yet. If we click off this, they would still go to the black images. So this is what they look like out of camera. So the first thing we want to do is actually stretch our image. This just gives you a preview of a stretch. We want to do it properly and apply that to the image. Now the easiest way I found to do that is to use the screen transfer function. So you go to processes, all processes, and then screen transfer. Now there are numerous different ways you can do this, and Joe's Astrophoto did a really good video showing 5 different ways you can actually do this process in PicInsight. There are multiple ways you can do virtually everything in PicInsight, but I think that this is the best way. So make sure all of your images are black, then you load up the screen transfer function. So that's processes, all processes, screen transfer. And we're also going to load up the histogram transformation at the same time. So you go to processes, intensity transformations, and then histogram transformation, and that will load up the histogram. Then all we need to do is click on the image we want to stretch, click this little auto stretch symbol. It looks like a warning type symbol. Click on that and it will stretch it. Then we're going to click the arrow and drag the arrow onto the histogram, and that will give you the histogram stretch. And then all we need to do is click on, drag the arrow onto that image, and you'll see it looks like it's gone completely white, but it has stretched it. We've just got to click the auto stretch or the preview auto stretch feature again. So I'll show you that again. We go to get the O3 image up. We're going to click the screen transfer or the auto stretch. That will provide the stretch. We're going to drag the triangle onto the histogram, then drag the triangle onto the image, and then click this little button up here, enable, disable screen transfer, and now we have a stretched image. And we'll do that again for the S2. So we're going to hit the auto stretch, going to drag the triangle onto the histogram, the triangle onto the image, and then hit this button up here. So now we have all of our images stretched. So we're getting to the stage where we're nearly at the stage where we can combine them. But what you'll probably notice, or what you can see here, is that some of the images, or this one in particular, the S2, is slightly darker than the O3 and the HA. So what we want to do is try and get the background all the same color, because when we combine them into the Hubble palette, if we don't, then it could give you some strange gradients. So the way we do that, or the simplest way to do that, again, there's probably multiple ways, but the way I do that is just to use the linear fit. It's a nice simple way of doing that. So again, processes, all processes, scroll down to linear fit. And then I always use the image which has the most data, so it's usually the HA as the reference image. So I click on this little button here, this little arrow or this little square to choose my image. I click HA, click OK, and then all I'll do is drag the triangle onto the S2, and that will change the S2 to be have a similar background color to the HA. Then I'll do the same onto the O3, and again that will even up the backgrounds so that they are a similar color. And then we can close or minimize linear fit, and then we are pretty much good to go now. So we're good to stack our images. So that's the basic editing done in terms of getting them ready to combine into the Hubble palette. Now what we're going to do is actually combine them. What I like to do is keep my images up here and keep all of the functions that I've used in a nice neat line here, so you can see what I've done. Okay, so the next thing, we want to combine them in the Hubble palette. So the Hubble palette is where we are going to assign the HA to the green, the S2 to the red, and then the O3 to the blue. So the easiest way I found to do that is to go to all processes and then LRGB combined. So scroll down to LRGB combined. What you'll find is all processes are in alphabetical order, so it's nice and easy to find everything. So you click on this, and we don't have any luminance data, so we can uncheck the luminance. So red, we're going to, because we're doing the Hubble palette, we're going to assign that to sulfur or S2. Green, we're going to assign to HA. And blue we're going to assign to oxygen. So this is the classic Hubble palette. I tend to click on the noise reduction I don't think it makes a massive difference. And then all we need to do is hit this this circle symbol, the apply global function within PicInsight, and you'll see an image pop up any second now. Okay, so here you have your new image, and the first thing you'll notice is just how green that image looks. And that's because we applied the HA, which has the most amount of data, to the green channel. And if you compare the amount of data in the HA to the O3 and the S2, you can see why the image is dominated with the green. So what we want to do is get rid of that green cast. And the best way to do that, or the simplest way to do that, is go to Processes, All Processes, and then run the scnr tool. And that just gets rid of the green dominant. It's automatically defaulted to green. You can play around with the level and the amount of this, but I tend to just leave it as the default. Grab that triangle and drop it onto the image. And as you'll see, it is now starting to look a little bit more like a Hubble Palette image. And one thing I picked up on Dylan O'Donnell's channel is actually when you look closely at the stars, there are some quite unusual colours within it, especially when you actually boost the saturation, which we're going to do later on. So what he suggested, and what works actually really well in PicInsight, is if you go to Processes, All Processes, and then Invert, and then you run this scnr tool again on the inverted image, it gives you much more natural looking stars. So just again grab that scnr, drop it on the inverted image. Okay, that's done. And then go back and invert your image back to normal. Then you'll see that the stars are looking much more natural, much more of a natural colour. And especially when we go to boost the saturation, which we'll get to in a second, you'll see that that makes a massive difference. So I'm just going to minimise the scnr tool now because we're done with it. Okay, so from here on out, there are numerous things that you can do. You can create masks, you can do sharpening, you can do noise reduction. I mean, there are millions of tools that you could run in PicInsight, but what I tend to do, or what I used to do in my very basic imaging process, is now just to play around with the curves. So if you go to Processes, Intensity Transformations, and then Curve Transformation, if you just hit Reset here, you should get something that looks like this, and automatically it will default down to the RGB. I was playing around with it earlier, so I've just reset that, and it will go to the RGB. Now if you click on this this real-time preview, it will show you all of the live edits you make. So when you make drastic edits, you can see they will show you this. So the curves transformation you want to be quite careful with. Again, at any time if you want to just reset, you just hit the bottom right button, it resets it. So you don't want to get overboard with this, or I find that you don't want to go overboard, but a subtle sort of S-shaped curve works quite well with this image I found. So I'm going to pull down the blacks to darken the background a little bit. I'm going to boost some of the highlights to bring out some of that detail in the nebulosity. I don't want to go overboard because it will look quite unnatural. I think there looks quite nice. And then all we're going to do is just boost the saturation in the whole image. So just grab that saturation slider and drag it right up. And again, you don't want to go too far, but that looks about right. And then once you're happy with it, just hit the apply button, and that will apply it again to the real-time preview, so don't worry about that. We can close the real-time preview, and this is what the image is starting to look like. So this is basically where I used to leave it, and this is my very, very basic Hubble Palette image processing. Again, I usually then take this into Lightroom or Photoshop and edit the image in Lightroom. Again, some of the sliders, some of the clarity functions I find works quite well in Lightroom. When getting into PicInsight, I found that this was just quite a helpful, or I thought this might be quite a helpful little process to go through just for those who are really just starting out. Now, if anyone who's been using PicInsight for a few months or a few years, you know, this isn't designed for you guys. I'm sure you have your own set techniques, but hopefully if you've just started out using PicInsight, this might help you out. So just to save this image, you can just go to save as. I always save it as a TIFF file because that holds a lot more detail than a JPEG. So just save it like that, and then I click the 16-bit, no compression, and then just click OK, and it will load, or it will save that to wherever you've outputted it. You can save the whole project. So if you click Save Project, and then choose where you want to save it, click Save, then that will take a while to save, but this will save all of your processes that you've been through, so you can then go back and see what you've done with to old data. You can re-edit, and you can pick up where you've left off with this. So what I will do now is leave PicInsight, and I'll take that image into Lightroom, and I'll run a few edits within Lightroom. Okay, so I've got my image into Lightroom, and I'm just going to make a few basic edits to this image now. So first thing I'm going to do is just crop it down a little bit, just to really show off that nebula. And then I tend to just play around with some of the sliders. So again, boosting that contrast looks quite nice. I'm not going to go overboard with it because I think it can look quite horrible if you do that. So I'm just going to go to about 20, 25 maybe. And I'm going to bring down the highlights a little bit because that core's looking, or the bubble itself's looking quite bright. And then I think I might just play around with the text, the clarity sliders again. Don't want to get overboard with it, and the texture. And then maybe boost that vibrance just a little bit. I think I might drop that texture a little bit as well. So there you can see it's not a huge amount of edits in Lightroom, but just brings out a little bit of the core, a little bit of the bubble in a bit more detail. I just drop that highlight a little bit again. So yeah, that's basically my very basic Hubble Palette editing process. Okay, so I hope you found that useful. Like I said, this isn't for anyone who's been using PicInsights for a while. If you have, you wouldn't have learned anything from this video, I'm afraid. It's just for those people who are just starting out, because I know it's not a very intuitive program to actually get your head around. So I thought this might be quite beneficial for someone who has just downloaded the program. Hopefully I'll get some better weather over the next few weeks, and I'll be back out in the garden. Let me know if you enjoyed this video and if you wanted any more PicInsight tutorials. I'm definitely not an expert, but I could go into a little bit more detail than I went into today. So if you found it useful, let me know, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.